Deceptive fortune. Millionaire returns after 15 days to find his mother living on the streets. The headline screamed from the screen, the bright colors splashing across Jason Reynolds' phone like a splash of ice water. 2 weeks of thrilling presentations, handshakes and the promise of a new multi-million-dollar partnership shattered with one bitter swipe of a finger. The glimmering towers of San Francisco loomed large as he stepped onto those familiar streets, the air thick with the scent of innovation and wealth, yet his stomach twisted with an unfamiliar weight, a gnawing dread he couldn't shake. Jason hurried through the bustling city, weaving past corporate giants and coffee shops soaked in ambition. Memories of his mother, Eleanor, flickered in his mind, the stories of resilience she'd shared when he was just a boy. "We rise from nothing," she'd said, "but never forget where you came from." Each quote echoed deeper with every passing block, each one now a hollow reminder of promises unkept. Suddenly he spotted her, a frail figure huddled against a cold stone wall, clutching a tattered blanket. Jason's heart stuttered, tension coiling in his chest. He rushed forward, his professional demeanor slipping away. "Mom!" he choked out, reaching for her, but hesitation plagued his touch. Confusion washed over her face, and the warmth of his triumph turned cold and sickening. "Jason, is that you?" Her voice trembled, layered with confusion and a haunting unfamiliarity. A crack formed in his heart, the oppressive reality of her mental struggles weighing heavier than the contracts he'd just signed. Thoughts raced through his mind, battling the panic threatening to explode from within. Images of his boardroom triumph clashed violently with the image of his mother, lost to the very world he had claimed. How had it come to this? The success he chased now felt like a bitter betrayal. What did it matter if his name adorned tech magazines if he couldn't save her? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. He swallowed hard, confronting a moral quandary that was tearing him apart. The cold realities of wealth and privilege had blinded him. Why hadn't he seen the symptoms of her isolation buried under layers of success? Determined, he turned to his connections, dialing numbers and arranging meetings, desperate to pull her from this abyss. But as names flashed up on his phone, they became weights anchoring him deeper into moral quicksand. The network that had raised him was part of the very machine fueling inequality. Unease wrapped tighter around him, eyes flitting back to the woman he once adored. As he learned about the structures that failed her, a battle raged inside, a relentless push and pull between a brittle dream and familial obligation. It built and built until he felt like he might crumble under the pressure of it all. Jason's fingers trembled as he scrolled through his contacts, hope drained from his chest, while the truth remained glaring. Every conversation about deals and innovations paled against the truth of his mother's suffering. She was a casualty of a system he had worked so diligently to succeed in, and now he stood on the precipice of action. His fight at that moment felt futile. The burdens of both success and love, interwoven yet distinctly separate, tipped him to the edge of despair. Would he throw away everything he'd built to shatter the structures that left her on the street? What kind of man would he be if he didn't? His heart raced as the stakes grew higher, and he stood at last facing the harsh truth. The shadows of skyscrapers felt darker now, and Jason Reynolds found his world spiraling into chaos, uncertainty nipping at his heels, ready to pull him under. Would he answer the call to fight for his mother, or would he let the tides of his prosperity sweep him back into comfort, leaving Eleanor behind? The world around him dulled, the hum of the city fading to white noise. Jason knelt beside Eleanor, the weight of his decisions bearing down with painful clarity. "Mom, we need to get you out of here," he said, urgency lacing his voice. A flicker of recognition sparked in her eyes, but the shadows loomed larger than any comfort he could offer. "How, Jason?" "This is who I am now," she whispered, a shattered echo of the vibrant woman he once knew. His chest tightened at her resignation. How could he rectify such a vast disparity between the life he built and the life she had been forced into? He could see the waste that success could inspire, the golden cage he felt trapped in. "No, it's not who you are. You're so much more than this," he insisted, his tone a mix of desperation and conviction, but he could sense the frailty in her belief. He took a deep breath, grounding himself in purpose. "I have resources now. I can help you," he offered, but doubt flickered through his thoughts. What help could a few connections truly provide? The business world was deft at deflecting the personal. Impersonal contracts, faceless negotiations. But Eleanor needed something more tangible than that, a first step. The idea of seeking a mental health professional surfaced like a lifebuoy. There was still time to intervene, before the despair deepened beyond recognition. He could not let her narrative end, lost on the streets. It needed to blossom back to life, rooted in hope instead of ashes. His resolve hardened, and Jason pulled his phone from his pocket, already searching for trusted specialists as he did so. "Jason, I don't want to be a burden," she said, her voice barely a whisper, but it cut through the air like a knife. Each word was a revelation, a reflection of the vast chasm created by his absence. "Mom, you're not a burden. You're my mother," he replied, determination igniting within him. The walls he'd built around his own success now threatened to crumble. He focused on the first call he needed to make. It was time to confront the very person who managed his career, a mentor who had always excelled in creating partnerships, but had also instilled an unsettling fear of vulnerability in Jason. "Maybe this isn't a partnership meeting," he muttered to himself, fingers pressing the call button. It would be a daunting conversation, one that would reveal both the depth of his commitment and the flaws of the system that had shaped him. The phone rang, and as he paced restlessly, the walls of the city pressed close, suffocating at times. "Jason?" came a smooth, confident voice on the other end. "What's on your mind?" The question felt simple, but the weight of his thoughts poured out like a flood. "I need your help. It's about my mum." The words tumbled out before he could second-guess himself. There was no reverse. He had crossed the threshold, and now he had to hold firm on this new path. "Jason, are you sure? We've got a lot on the line," his mentor replied, skepticism threading through those words. They mirrored Jason's own doubts. Would he risk the narrow pathway of success for an untested venture to save Eleanor? Yet even as doubt flared, a new determination took hold. He envisioned the fractured pieces of his mother's world, how with each conversation he was reclaiming not just her lost dignity, but his own morals buried beneath his ascent. Would he let the chains of obligation bind him, or would he push against them? No assurances lay in wait, only uncertainty and the hard truth of his system's flaws. The future shimmered like a mirage, indistinct yet tantalizing. But in that moment it was the fight against despair that quelled his rising panic. "I'm sure," he declared with newfound strength, the resolve igniting as he laid bare his mother's plight. The battle had begun, but what form would it take? As the call ended, Jason resolved to muster every ounce of conviction in the quest ahead. The stakes had never felt higher. Everything he'd built hung in the balance, tethered to decisions he had yet to make. Stepping forward, he could sense the world shifting around him, each decision propelling him deeper into a conflict he hadn't anticipated. But facing the demons lurking in the fractures of his own moral beliefs compelled him onward. The question now: how would he confront the person he had become, juxtaposed against the son he needed to be? The first real test of his resolve awaited, lurking just beyond the threshold of hope. Would he have the courage to challenge the very foundations of his success, to save the woman who had once given him everything? Jason paced the small waiting area, the fluorescent lights flickering overhead like his uncertain thoughts. Each tick of the clock echoed in his mind, taunting him with the heaviness of the moment. Why had he waited so long to face these truths? The urgency of the situation consumed him, yet he couldn't shake off the gnawing apprehension. Time felt elastic, stretching endlessly between him and the meeting that could change everything. He had called a mental health clinic, securing an appointment for Eleanor. It felt like a small victory, but the gravity of her situation loomed larger. Anxiety snaked through his thoughts, like a vine constricting around his breath. What if they couldn't help her? What if she resisted? Each possibility darkened his resolve, but there was no turning back now. He thought about his mentor, Robert, and the conversation that had compelled him to take this leap. Robert had always preached about the importance of controlling narratives in business, but this was personal. Eleanor's narrative was slipping away while he fumbled with his own. The juxtaposition nagged at him. Here he was, a successful man with a figure banking on the polished facade of wealth, while his mother struggled for the most fundamental aspects of life. "Why didn't I see this sooner?" he questioned, gritting his teeth against the tidal wave of guilt. He had chased after success without recognizing the price paid at home. The glittering lifestyle he had built merely masked the cracks in their relationship. But now these cracks threatened to splinter into irreparable damage. As he composed himself for the meeting, the door swung open, and a slender woman in a blazer appeared, her expression warm yet professional. "Jason, we're ready for you." The way she said his name sent a shiver of anxiety down his spine. He nodded, steeling himself. Inside the consultation room, the walls were a calming blue, an effort to soothe the storm brewing within him. The therapist introduced herself as Claire and guided him to a comfortable chair. As he sat, anxiety twisted in his gut. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted, the vulnerability in his voice surprising even himself. "Doing what?" Claire asked, her tone gentle, encouraging him to delve deeper. "Help my mom. I've been so far removed from her life I don't know how to reach her. I'm scared I'll fail," he confessed, his words rushes of confession, each filled with the weight of neglect and guilt. Contemplation settled in Claire's eyes. "It's understandable to feel that way. The first step is recognizing where you are, and you've done that," she replied. "Do you believe she will want help?" "I hope so. But she might see me as the enemy, the one who left, the one whose success represents the life she could have had," he admitted, voice thickening. The realization struck like a pinprick to his pride, revealing insecurities that had long been buried beneath layers of ambition. Facing that fear is part of the process. "Think about approaching her from a place of understanding, not blame," Claire encouraged. Jason could feel a crack beginning to form in the walls he had built around himself. "What if she doesn't want to accept my help? Then we find other paths. Change is slow. Tiny steps can yield massive results," she reassured, emphasizing the importance of patience. The truth of her words resonated deeply within him. As their conversation progressed, he felt a flicker of clarity growing amidst the fog of uncertainty. He imagined Eleanor, her spirit dulled but not extinguished. If he could just bridge the gap between their worlds, perhaps he could breathe life back into her dreams, allowing him to reclaim a fragment of the lost relationship. With every word he exchanged with Claire, Jason unearthed pieces of himself he had hidden away. The determination that flickered in his belly ignited into a steady flame. Maybe he could reshape not just his mother's fate, but his own as well. As he stepped out of the clinic, the bustling city felt different, a mixture of hope and despair. There was a fierce urgency now, a quiet determination pushing him forward. He needed to confront Eleanor, to present the possibilities lying within their grasp. But standing on the precipice of rekindling their connection, a thought ricocheted painfully in his mind. How would she react when he finally came to her, not just asking to help, but to accept his own shortcomings? The looming confrontation shook his resolve, but he knew it was a necessary risk, one that could either bridge or widen the chasm between them. Would he enhance her world, or shatter the remnants further? Jason's next steps now hung in the air, poised for action. Would he have the strength to face the daughter of despair and build the bridge to redemption? The path was approaching fast, and he could see the horizon drawing near. The moment of truth awaited, echoing silently in the shadows of his ambition. With each step away from the clinic, Jason's heart churned in tandem with his thoughts. The city buzzed around him, a chaotic symphony that contrasted sharply with the stillness building within. Clarity washed over him in waves, but it was met by the undertow of anxiety. The streets, once a celebrated backdrop to his success, now felt foreign, uninviting, a stark reminder of the distance between him and Eleanor. His plan was simple in theory: reach out, reconnect, and offer help. But the intricacies of human emotion unveiled a labyrinth far more complex than he'd ever navigated in business. In a boardroom, he could muster facts, figures, and strategies to sway decisions. But facing his mother required him to peel away the layers of pride, exposing vulnerabilities he had long relegated to the shadows. The image of Eleanor flooded his mind, a poignant reminder of the woman he once knew, full of laughter, dreams, and warmth. Now she was a ghost, haunted by her circumstances. Did she even recognize the person he had become? Would she remember the son who had inadvertently chosen success over family? He quickened his pace, urgency clawing at his chest. As he approached her usual spot, a shiver ran down his spine. The corner where he had seen her last, a makeshift retreat adorned with discarded newspapers and remnants of a life interrupted. Picking through the debris of his memories, he had imagined this moment countless times, but nothing could have prepared him for the reality. Eleanor was there, her figure both frail and resilient, an emblem of tragedy and survival wrapped in layers of tattered clothing. She cradled a small cardboard sign, frayed at the edges, while her eyes appeared lost in the horizon of swirling city life. For a fleeting moment, Jason hesitated, his heart thrumming with trepidation. Was he truly ready to confront the consequences of his choices, to face the very woman he felt had slipped through his fingers? Breath caught in his throat, he called out gently, "Mum?" The name felt foreign on his tongue, each syllable a blend of hope and fear. Eleanor turned slowly, her expression shifting from confusion to disbelief. The recognition flickered in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a storm of emotions. "Jason," she whispered, the name nearly cracking under the weight of the years. "What are you doing here?" Her voice trembled, as if the very ground beneath her had shifted. I came to see you," he stammered, the words halting as they escaped. The barriers he had erected began to feel flimsy, but how could he convey everything he had learned? "I want to help you." A bitter smile twisted Eleanor's lips. "Help? From you? You never looked back." The accusation pierced through him. Silence enveloped them, thick with unspoken truths and unresolved pain. Jason felt the urge to defend himself, to explain how the world had pulled him away. But in that moment he realized that justifications wouldn't mend the rift. He needed to listen. "I know I can't change the past," he said finally, his voice steady despite the tremor within. "But I want to start now. I've learned things about myself, about our family. I've made mistakes and I want to make amends." Her gaze faltered, torn between mistrust and a flicker of longing. "And what do you expect me to do with that?" His heart raced. He had to show her he was serious, that her life mattered. "Let me help you, we can figure this out together." Each word felt like a delicate promise, one that he was determined to keep. The silence that followed felt monumental, each second stretching into eternity. Jason could see her deliberating, a battle between hope and disdain waging in her weary eyes. "Why should I believe you now?" she finally replied, her tone challenging. He took a cautious step forward, sensing the fragile trust for which he had to fight. "Because I need to try. Because you deserve so much more than this." Jason's resolve solidified amid her penetrating gaze. He had stepped into the fray, but would it be enough to awaken the dormant spirit of the mother he once knew? An uncertain tremor coursed through him as they hovered on the edge of possibility and disillusionment. Would this moment serve as the foundation of redemption, or merely deepen their scars? The answer teetered perilously close, and Jason steeled himself against the tumultuous tide of emotions, threatening to drown him once more. The confrontation had only just begun. He could feel the weight of it pressing down, each second intensifying the urgency for resolution. What if this encounter unraveled deeper truths about not just Eleanor, but about himself? He gripped tighter to the hope that, amidst their fractured connection, he could forge a new path forward. Little did he know, the challenges that lay ahead would test not only his resolve, but the fragility of their bond, pushing him to confront the reasons he'd fled from love and responsibility for far too long. The horizon darkened as the gravity of realization surged within him. The transformation he sought wouldn't just redefine their relationship, it would redefine him. and he was ready to face whatever came next, no matter the cost. Jason stood frozen in the fragile moment, between past and present. Eleanor's expression flickered with a conflict he could hardly comprehend, the years of separation forming an invisible barrier that loomed large between them. He took another step closer, compelled by a mix of desperation and determination. "Let's just talk," he urged, an edge of urgency creeping into his voice. "We can start with small steps. I can get you a place to stay, food, maybe—" "Food," she interjected, her tone sharp as glass. "You think that's all I need? You come here with a checkbook and empty promises, and you want to play the hero?" Each word stripped away the confident facade he had meticulously built over the years. He sensed the tightening in her muscles, the defensiveness that radiated from her. Each accusation felt like a branding iron against his skin, reminding him of the son he had abandoned. It wasn't just about fixing her. He was here to confront the reality of what he had lost. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Jason replied, fighting the urge to retreat. "I just want to be here for you now." As the city hummed around them, he clenched his fists, determined to navigate through the tangled emotions that gnawed at his insides. In the noise of the street he felt more alone than ever, an outsider in a world he had once conquered. He was prepared for any response, but when Eleanor turned her gaze back to the passing cars, Jason realized he had underestimated her resilience. "Do you even know why I'm here?" Eleanor finally asked, not looking at him. "I made choices too. I'm not just some victim of your past." Her words struck a nerve he hadn't anticipated. Stripped of the landmines of their shared history, Jason felt exposed. Every defensive mechanism he had relied on unraveling, revealing the tender core of his own guilt and regret. She had every right to be furious, yet here he stood, uncertain how to express the turmoil within him. "I never wanted to forget," Jason murmured, voice wavering. "Everything I learned because of you. You shaped who I became, even if that meant detaching myself." Eleanor's silence was deafening. He watched as thick clouds of doubt lingered in her eyes. She seemed to wrestle with her own emotions, capturing the nuances of betrayal and the faint glimmer of what could have been, a relationship untainted by past actions. "What do you want, Jason?" she asked, softer this time. "Do you want me to move in with you and pretend everything is fine?" That was it, the crux of their confrontation. They were not just dealing with superficial wounds, but profound chasms of understanding, forgiveness, and past missed chances. "No, I want to uncover the truth," he replied, each word emerging from deep within him. "I want to know who you are, not just the label society has placed on you. I have to know the real you, Mom." He saw it then, a flicker of something that perhaps resembled hope. The lines on her face softened, and Jason breathed in the possibility, even while knowing it teetered on the edge of precariousness. "People like us never get second chances, Jason. You don't get to just walk back in and fix things," she spat out. But her voice lacked the barbs it once held. "I know," he answered, allowing the weight of his admissions to carry him. "But this is my chance, to put in the work, to earn back your trust if you'll allow me." Both of them stood entrenched in the rawness of that moment. As they hovered at the precipice, what lay on the other side remained veiled in uncertainty, but Jason felt the potential for recovery blooming. "Maybe you're honest this time," Eleanor said, the caution in her voice almost palpable. "But why should I trust you?" His heart thudded loudly in his chest, an urgency intensifying within him. He realized trust was not a currency to be doled out easily. It had to be built. "Because I'm willing to show up every day," he asserted, conviction fortifying his voice. "I'll listen. I won't pretend I have all the answers, but I'll fight for you one step at a time." A moment passed, filled with the weight of silence and possibility, but in that silence lay the crux of a question. Could love, strained by years of abandonment, start anew? Suddenly, Eleanor's gaze shifted away again, her resolve returning like a shadow, casting doubt on his rising optimism. "What if it's too late, Jason?" she asked, her voice wavering slightly beneath the bravado. That question hung ominously in the air, sending tremors through him as he pondered the reality of their situation. What if the past was insurmountable, too much time lost? As the traffic flowed ceaselessly around them, a particularly loud horn pierced through the moment. Jason's instinct told him she was slowly returning to the protective shell she had constructed, the one she'd used to shield herself from life's knocks. The specter of their conversation loomed heavy. He would need more than words to penetrate her barriers. He had to be prepared for the difficult journey ahead. With a steadier breath, he clung to the hope that perhaps, through the fog of hurt and anger, a pathway could begin to materialize, not just into Eleanor's heart, but into his own. But would they possess the courage to tear down the figments of their past, or would they remain shackled to the shadows? The tension pulled taut like a drawn bowstring, and he realized he was on the precipice of confronting not just what had happened between them, but the core of who he had become, and the man he still needed to be. Jason felt the weight of Eleanor's doubt bearing down on him like an anchor, yet he couldn't let it drown him. Each second stretched painfully as he assessed their surroundings, a cacophony of urban life swirling around them, indifferent to his struggle. He needed to act, to forge a connection that transcended their shared past. "Let's take a walk," Jason suggested, tempering his voice to convey both authority and vulnerability. Movement might break through the barriers thickening the air between them. Eleanor hesitated but then nodded, her posture still tense. They began walking slowly, navigating the worn concrete sidewalk as the sun cast long shadows from the buildings above. Each step felt like a negotiation of their fragile truce. The city buzzed around them, a striking contrast to the quiet turmoil raging inside. "Tell me what you want to do," he urged, hoping to invite her to share pieces of her world that had remained hidden from his view. "What's important to you now?" She hesitated, her brows knitted together in thought. "You think you can just ask questions and learn everything? I'm not some riddle to be solved." Her defiance sparked a flicker of challenge in Jason. He had spent years avoiding confronting anyone, especially himself. Here was the chance to break the cycle. "I know I can't fix this with a few questions," he replied, his heart racing. "But if we're going to move forward, I need to understand where you're coming from." Eleanor cast him an incredulous stare, her eyes shimmering with a blend of fury and disbelief. "You think it's that simple?" "I'm a mess, Jason. This isn't a tidy little story where everyone hugs it out at the end." "Mess or not, I'm still willing to dive into it," he countered, feeling a mix of challenge and excitement. This wasn't about crafting a narrative. It was about confronting the reality of their existence. As they walked, a flicker of determination ignited within him, not just for her, but for himself. It was time to confront his own choices, the career he built on the foundations of other people's suffering, and the self-imposed barriers he had erected in place of honesty. Who was he beneath the layers of success? "What do you know about struggle?" Eleanor's voice cut through his reverie, pushing him back into reality. "You've had everything handed to you." "I thought so too," he replied, a strange conviction filling his voice. "But what I've built feels empty without understanding the truth of where I came from. You were part of that, Mom. Your struggle shaped my world, even if it felt easier to ignore." Her mouth twisted in skepticism, but in that moment he saw the tension in her shoulders ease just slightly. He was learning about the dance of probing, advancing, retreating, and adjusting to the emotional landscape before him. "So you talk about wanting to learn, but not about facing the consequences of what you've done," she countered, her voice thickening with pain. "You distanced yourself, Jason. You left me behind when I needed you the most." His chest constricted at her words. They were sharp, stinging, and undeniably true. "I can't change the past," he said, desperation seeping into his tone. "But I can be present now. I can make that choice today." Eleanor shook her head, yet a hint of contemplation threaded through her defiance. Jason sensed he was chipping away at her barriers, however slowly. He could feel the flickers of hope igniting, pushing aside the shadows of resentment. "What would you want from me now?" she asked, a slight tremor in her voice, an indication of vulnerability creeping in. He stopped walking, turning to face her fully, committed. "I want to honor your truth, not for you to be defined by what's happened. I want to help you find your footing if you'll let me. And honestly, I need it for myself too." Her gaze faltered, and in that moment, He saw the internal battle waging within her, a flicker of longing for connection, battling against fear and doubt. "You think that's enough?" she whispered, the brave facade beginning to crack. "Enough is just the starting point," he replied with frankness, feeling the rawness of both their emotions spill into the space between them. "Trust will take time, but I'm ready to earn it." Just then, as the atmosphere shifted tectonically, a flock of birds erupted from a nearby tree, taking to the sky. The moment hung suspended in time, everything around them a swirl of possibilities yet unformed. But in the depth of his yearning to bridge the chasm between them, a disquietude surfaced. The fear that the struggles he faced would never truly end, and that the damage from the past could never fully heal. "I need to think," Eleanor finally said, her voice shaky as she turned away slightly, as if drafting an exit route for herself. Jason felt the knot tighten in his stomach, yet willed himself to remain steady, watching her walk away from him, pondering the impossible reality of what lay ahead. Would the risk of dismantling the past lead to a future worth seizing? He knew he had to fight for this moment, but was he prepared for the consequences that might follow? The way forward was murky and tumultuous, but if Eleanor chose to take that risk, they would both have to confront the shadows cast by regret. As she moved a few steps away, he steeled himself for whatever choices awaited them at the intersection of hope and fear. And though a frigid silence settled over them, it was alive with unformed possibilities, pulsating with tension, begging for resolution. The question lingered. Could they piece together a semblance of truth from the remains of their fractured relationship? Jason stood quietly, feeling the heartache settle in the pit of his stomach. Watching Eleanor's retreating figure, he wrestled with the gnawing sense of urgency chopping through the tranquil facade he had cultivated over the years. What had once seemed like a quest for external validation, his career, his image, now felt stunted and hollow in light of the emotional turmoil he faced. As he walked back through the crowded streets, absorbing the urban symphony surrounding him, he wrestled with his own identity. Who was he, truly? The polished businessman who thrived in the cutthroat environment of corporate negotiation, or a man still tethered to his mother's struggles, both ignorant and fearful of their implications? He needed clarity, and the heaviness of unaddressed issues weighed heavily on his mind. Each step felt less like a retreat from Eleanor, and more like a prelude to an awakening. The rhythm of pedestrians shuffled past him, an inconsequential blur, while he remained rooted in contemplation. If he was going to bridge the chasm born of neglect and miscommunication, he needed to confront his avoidance. He recalled his childhood in the cramped apartment they once shared. Echoes of Eleanor's laughter intertwined with the harsh reality of their circumstances. Stacks of overdue bills littered the coffee table, an unending reminder of their financial struggles. He chose to escape those confines, projecting an image of success that mirrored the lives of those he envied. But in doing so, he had dimmed the light of his own foundation. A decision crystallized in his mind, a recognition of the uncomfortable yet essential truth he had sidestepped. It was no longer about presenting a facade of success or bravado in the boardroom. It was about confronting the very roots of his fears and their emotional consequences. That evening, he allocated some time to sift through his journals from his earlier days in the corporate world, writings filled with ambitious plans and raw insights about his youth. As he flipped through the pages, a sense of nostalgia rushed over him, the dreams of building a safe and secure future lifting him momentarily above the fray. But there were glaring inconsistencies stitched into his aspirations: the absence of family, the glossing over of emotional trauma, the constant avoidance of vulnerability. He paused at an entry dated shortly after he moved out. "I thought leaving would free me. Instead it left a void, a distance that feels widening rather than healing." The sentiment echoed in his mind, resonating painfully against the backdrop of their recent confrontation. Determined to close the gap with Eleanor, Jason formulated a plan to actively participate in volunteer work that addressed homelessness and poverty, causes that had haunted his upbringing. It was a way to honor his mother's struggles while also grounding himself in a renewed sense of purpose. The next morning he sought out local shelters, looking for ways to contribute. Each interaction felt like peering into a mirror. The faces he encountered reminded him not only of his mother, but of the anguish and resilience embedded in both their lives. As he dove deeper into these experiences, discovering the complexity of the stories, but also the glaring similarities to his own life, he felt a growing determination. He would not merely be a passerby in this world. Instead, he would craft a new narrative, one that involved action rather than avoidance. Returning home that evening, the sun barely setting, Jason dared to think of Eleanor again. He needed to reconnect, to demonstrate how deeply he was willing to engage with the struggles mapped out in his life. Show her that he had begun to face the consequences of his choices and was ready for their reconciliation. He took out his phone and started typing her a message, but the reflective adrenaline coursing through him demanded more than words. He would invite her to join him in this new venture, an olive branch enveloped in sincerity. As he drafted that message, one poignant thought pierced through his otherwise sprawling mind. This journey wouldn't be just about understanding one another. It would demand that they both confront their deepest fears, challenge their inherent beliefs, and navigate the complexities of healing together. But just before he hit send, a gut feeling told him to check his own motives once more. Had he truly committed to empathy and understanding, or was he merely searching for redemption? The moment hung heavy in the air around him, pregnant with uncertainty, pushing him to look deep within for the truth of his intentions. What would he discover in that introspection? Would he finally understand the breadth of what it meant to build bridges instead of walls? Eleanor had chosen to think, but would he be brave enough to confront the reflections of his past, navigate the discomfort in hopes of rediscovering his mother amid all the chaos? The answer awaited him, tangled in the complexity of human connection, just beyond that trembling screen. Jason sat in front of his laptop, the cursor blinking with impatience as he hesitated over the keyboard. He felt the weight of the moment pressing down, heavy with the understanding that choices carried consequences. Where once he had flown through life seeking accolades that others deemed important, now he was confronted with the reality of vulnerability, his own and Eleanor's. His mind wandered again to the people he'd met in the shelters. Their stories, woven with threads of pain and resilience, enveloped him like a heavy cloak that refused to release its grip. He had often viewed his past as a mere stepping stone, a series of necessary sacrifices that led to professional success. But now, stepping into the lives of others, forced him to reconcile with the past he'd tried to escape. His mother's struggles, their shared history, the silence that had thickened between them over the years. Why had he waited so long to face the demons haunting him? Fear had paralyzed him, and he had mistakenly viewed disconnection as a path to success. The very things he had abhorred about his upbringing, the clutter, the insecurities, the endless fight for survival, had forged his identity in unexpected ways. As he typed and then deleted phrases in his draft message to Eleanor, something profound clicked within him. He had buried these feelings for too long. It was time to face them head-on. He took a deep breath, refocused, and began again. This time, rather than make it about themselves, he chose to craft his words around shared experiences. "Eleanor," he began, finding strength he hadn't anticipated. "I've been doing some volunteering at the shelters, and it's opened my eyes to so much. You were right about everything. We need to talk." Before he could second-guess himself, he sent the message, feeling a surge of both fear and exhilaration. What if she rejected him? What if she couldn't understand the effort he was making to change? Yet a glimmer of hope lit within. Even if she didn't respond the way he envisioned, making this effort was crucial for his growth. Days passed, each one bleaker than the last, marked by a barren silence on Eleanor's end. The initial surge of hope gave way to doubt as he immersed himself deeper in his volunteer work, facing some of his own demons reflected in others. The cacophony of life's harsh realities was relentless, but with each passing day, he paid closer attention to the nuances of his surroundings. The raw stories of survival, the flicker of gratitude, the overwhelming weight of despair. He began to share more of himself with the people he met. His hesitant conversations turned into real connections, peeling away layers of self-protection that had long shielded him. He learned of their dreams, aspirations snuffed out by circumstance. To see others fight through adversity ignited something new within him, a determination to not only confront his past, but to redefine his future. One evening, as he sat in a small kitchen at the shelter, stirring a pot of soup, it struck him. He had inadvertently discovered a talent for connecting with others. Encouraged by their stories, he found himself sharing his own, the vulnerabilities he'd kept locked away, the laughter, the camaraderie, the spontaneous moments of honest exchange filled him with a sense of purpose. It felt redemptive to look beyond personal gain and to share, to truly engage. Just when Jason was ready to believe he was on the brink of transformation, he received a call that shattered his budding sense of stability. It was an unfamiliar number, yet something compelled him to answer. On the line was a voice he knew well, but this time it was thick with urgency. The foundation he'd begun to build felt suddenly precarious. "Jason, it's Eleanor. We need to talk. It's important." His heart raced as he absorbed the weight of her words. All he could think was that the moment had come. The peeling away of facades was nearing its climax. Was he truly ready to confront the core of their estrangement? The call cut through the evening quiet, leaving an aftermath of anticipation swirling in the space between them, and Jason knew instinctively that this interaction would challenge everything he had been striving for. What awaited him in that conversation with Eleanor? A potential reckoning or further conflict? Would he be prepared to face the truths that had long remained unspoken? Jason squeezed the phone so tightly in his hand that it felt as if it might shatter, the reality of Eleanor's call crashing down around him like a tidal wave. He could hear the rising cadence of her voice, threaded with urgency, and he sensed the gravity of the conversation that lay ahead. Would this be the reckoning he had both longed for and dreaded? Was he prepared for the possibility that their paths might diverge even further? He braced himself against the kitchen counter, trying to stabilize the whirlwind of feelings swirling within him. The warmth of the soup simmering behind him, once a symbol of connection and comfort, faded into the background, replaced by an icy knot in his stomach. Jason's thoughts raced, circling back to their last confrontation, a time when vulnerability had been a weapon instead of a bridge to understanding. He needed to approach this differently. After a deep breath, he dialed Eleanor's number, the familiar digits now feeling foreign like an intricate puzzle he had yet to solve. As the rings echoed in his ear, he wondered how much she had changed during their silence. How much had he changed? The sound of her voice was the same when she picked up, yet there was an underlying urgency that felt different, amplified, as if it carried both their unvoiced fears. "Jason?" she questioned, her tone strangled but tender, as if the distance she'd maintained could no longer contain all that was unsaid. "Eleanor," he replied, clutching the phone like it was a lifeline. I'm glad you called." His admission hung in the air between them, a fragile acknowledgement of their past. He could feel the weight of every moment they had spent apart, and though he wanted to rush forward, he found himself caught between a desire for connection and an instinct to protect himself from more wounds. "Jason, I've had a lot to think about," she continued, her voice steady, turning the vulnerability into something approaching resolve. "About us, about me, what you've been doing, volunteering, connecting with people, it's admirable. But I need to know if you're willing to confront the truths within yourself before we can move forward." Her words stirred something deep within him, a mix of longing and fear. The instances he had shared with those at the shelter had opened doors to feelings long closed. Could he truly confront the truths of his own life, with memories of his mother's struggles replaying in vivid detail? Did he have the courage to face the reality of his failures? "I am," he said, surprising himself with the conviction that laced his voice. "I've been working through my past, trying to understand what it means to connect, to break these cycles. But I can't do it alone, Eleanor. I need you." Silence enveloped them, thick and heavy. He questioned whether he had been too forward, whether he had unwittingly pushed her further away. Then her voice crackled back through the line, softer this time, like the first light of dawn creeping through the darkness. "I wasn't sure if you'd call back," she confessed. "I didn't want to pressure you into facing the things you've avoided for so long. But this is important. You're important. You have to realize you're capable of more than just surviving. You can learn to thrive, Jason. I believe in that." Her belief was a gift, but alongside it came the responsibility of proving her right. What did it mean to thrive? To embrace the chaos of his past instead of fleeing from it. As they exchanged thoughts, Jason began to see the outline of a new path emerging, full of potential yet shrouded in uncertainty. He sensed the need to challenge himself deeper, to unearth the truth of what their connection could become. But he felt the old fears lurking, fear of failure, fear of inadequacy. The conversation shifted from their estrangement to the potential of healing, and as their words danced in the ether, he realized the impending transformation would require more than mere acknowledgement. He needed to dismantle the walls he'd so carefully constructed. When they finally hung up, Jason was left grappling with what he had promised and what lay ahead. There was a storm brewing around the realization that he might finally have to face the one person he feared the most, himself. With thoughts racing, he knew he carried the weight of expectation on his shoulders, a different kind of pressure that some might find suffocating. Yet amidst the uncertainty, he felt a flicker of excitement. Change was uncomfortable, but awoke something long dormant within him. Though the memory of his mother weighed heavily on him, there was also the vital recognition that he had the capacity for renewal. This was just the beginning. What unforeseen revelations awaited him in this personal excavation? Could he confront the memories that had once paralyzed him and learn to soar, finally breaking free of the burdens that had shackled his spirit for far too long? Jason sat on the edge of his bed, the room dimly lit by the soft glow of the street lamp filtering through the curtained window. He had spent weeks embarking on a journey of self-discovery, burning through the layers of his past like the chapters in a book he couldn't put down. Every interaction at the shelters redefined his understanding of struggle and resilience, but none captivated him like the discussions with Eleanor, hidden amid walls adorned with regret and misunderstanding. He lifted his phone to his ear, dialing Eleanor's number once more. His heartbeat quickened, the prospect of change both thrilling and terrifying. Would he find the courage to embrace vulnerability, or would it slip through his fingers like sand? "Eleanor?" he greeted as her warm voice washed over him. "Jason, I've been waiting for your call," she replied, a hint of uncertainty laced with hope. "We need to meet," he said, the straightforwardness of his invitation surprising even himself. It was time. No more postponing, no more hiding. "Where?" she asked, the single word echoing through the tension of unresolved emotions hanging between them. "The shelter. It's where I've started to understand what really matters. I want you to see it. I want you to meet those I've met," he declared, determination solidifying his purpose. There was a pause on the other end, but soon Eleanor agreed. "I'll be there." The anticipation of their meeting catalyzed something within him. As he made his way to the shelter, the steely resolve within him felt like armor, readying him for the most daunting challenge yet, confronting the truth of their shared past and the potential for reconciliation. Upon arriving, he found the bustling atmosphere alive with energy. The smell of simmering soup wafted through the air, but the richness of connection between individuals was what truly filled the room. He felt the collective heartbeat of the shelter community, a pulse of diversity, resilience, and empathy. Eleanor arrived moments later, her figure standing hesitantly at the entrance. As she stepped inside, Jason remembered the place he had left behind, a world forged from resilience yet marred by struggle. She spotted him, and as their eyes met, he understood that this moment held the potential to alter the course of their relationship forever. "Welcome," he said gently, gesturing toward the thrumming life around them. "Let me introduce you." As he led her through the crowd, each interaction felt like a testament to endurance. He introduced her to Maria, a single mother who had fought tirelessly to keep her children in school while they battled homelessness. Through every story shared, he watched Eleanor's eyes widen, her doubts and defenses softly peeling back, replaced by the vibrant realities of human connection. "This is why I've been drawn here," he explained. "I didn't just seek to help. I wanted to understand. Every person here has a story, and there's power in those stories. They remind me of a different life," he continued, eyes shifting to her. one that could easily have been ours. Eleanor absorbed his revelations, and he saw the ripple of emotions stirring under the surface as she listened to each heartfelt narrative. Later, as they stood together amidst the gentle hum of laughter and sharing, Jason felt a tide of vulnerability wash over him. This is where my journey turned. I realized I had the power to redefine my relationship with you, to confront the consequences of my absence. But I can't do it without you. He gathered his courage, looking directly into her eyes. I said a lot of things in our last conversation, and I want each of them to ring true. I'm not just asking you to forgive me. I want to understand, I want to support you without trying to save you. You're my mother, and I could never afford to forget that again. The silence that followed felt heavy, yet pregnant with possibility. Eleanor's gaze lowered for a moment, wrestling with the tumult of emotions that swirled within her, a battle between hope and uncertainty. Yet when she met his eyes again, he noticed a definite shift. Something had transformed within her. "This is a start," she said finally, a whisper filled with tentative promise. "But it's not just about the past." Her voice held power that resonated in the depths of his soul. "Together, we can decide where to go from here. No more avoidance, no more running." With newfound clarity, they exchanged ideas and struggles, mapping out a path toward understanding. What followed wasn't just a conversation, it was a promise to nurture their bond. They identified a shared commitment. Growth and healing would take time. They would work through the complexities together, and they needed to foster compassion, not only for each other, but for themselves. As their time at the shelter drew to a close, Jason felt a sense of exhilaration. The road ahead was undefined, yet they stood equipped with the insight to navigate it. Each realization fortified his desire to embrace his past fully, allowing him to mold it into a legacy of purpose and connection. Returning to his apartment later that night, Jason's heart swelled with gratitude. He was no longer trying to merely conquer the new world he had built. Instead, he had forged a relationship grounded in mutual understanding, respect, and genuine reconciliation. The shadows of guilt and regret had begun to dissipate, replaced by flickers of hope and possibility. He recognized he had not just developed a deeper awareness of Eleanor. He had transformed himself into a man willing to confront and share his vulnerabilities, devoid of fear. Instead of retreating from the hard truths of his existence, he had stepped directly into their embrace, pledging to grow alongside his mother. Jason felt a triumphant smile curl upon his lips. He had not only taken steps toward healing a fractured relationship, but had discovered a newfound commitment to a purpose greater than himself. The individual he had feared confronting had emerged, bold, resolute, and ready to build a legacy forged in love, understanding, and resilience. The world felt lighter, the horizon brightening with promise. He was ready to take on the unknown, moving forward with Eleanor by his side and embracing the journey ahead one step at a time. This was the moment when everything changed. Jason Reynolds had arrived, not as a product of success alone, but as a man who had achieved the ultimate victory, true connection, born of recognition and growth. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Seriously, it makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Let your voice be heard. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories know the power of community and collective support.